with myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. What have I become?
What the fuck am I watching?
Andy, you okay?
I'm fine. It's just that life is pointless and nothing matters, and I'm always tired. Also, I can't sleep. I'm overeating. None of my old hobbies interest me.
Iverson just missed a layup at the buzzer. Sixers lose. Who gives a crap, huh? I mean, it's just a silly game anyways.
We'll tell the waitress he's drunk by the time we get to coffee.
Oh, the anger sharks are swimming in my head. You gotta dump that shit! You gotta dump that shit!
I will make you hurt.
Welcome back into The Door Report, episode 283, on a rainy, dark, first official TDR of the fall. Is that correct?
I think so. I think that is correct. I am not a Farmer's Almanac, but I do believe that is correct.
Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. I am Will Byrum, joined as always, begrudgingly, by my Philadelphia Eagles fan co-host, Trevor Hulan, a.k.a. Hack Squat, Jim Duggan.
Go
Here
Birds.
at the Door Report. Interrupt my flow. Here at the Door Report, we are presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay. Shipping is always fast and free. Item selections includes individual cards, graded cards, NFL team packs, and more. So check them out on eBay. And I think that link, somebody may be out there, I'll check it after this and I might have to correct it. That link is www.ebay.com/615collectibles.
Sounds like it would be right.
I think that is the actual link. I will double check that. Might have to put that underneath the tweet. We are also sponsored by Outlaw Beer. Thank you to Outlaw Beer. Shout out to you guys for continuing to help TDR put on some great tailgates, which we will not have next week because Vanderbilt's on a bye week.
Unfortunately, I think we do.
I don't know if unfortunately is the right word.
I was about
there,
to say, I think we probably need a break from Vanderbilt football for a good week, just to sort of detox ourselves.
Dude, so this weekend, I'm really undecided because normally, like in my brain, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, this weekend, I'm going to watch an insane amount of football. Vanderbilt with a bye week. So I'm actually going to be able to watch games all across the country without any distraction. And the Titans play on Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually be able to watch Red Zone instead of forcing my eyes to bleed while watching the Tennessee Titans.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm not so sure because football is starting to make me sick to my stomach. That's kind of leaning into what we're going to be talking about this episode. Trevor went on the road, traveled to Missouri, to Columbia, to watch the Vanderbilt Commodores lose in another gut-wrenching new fashion. It is amazing. My dad came over to TDR headquarters to watch the game with me. My mom did as well, made some incredible mac and cheese, saved the mood. No, she didn't, but she tried her best with some incredible mac and cheese. And he said, and we were talking about it, he was basically saying, it's impressive that after 50 plus years of watching this team, 40 plus years of remembering watching this team, they still find new ways to rip your heart out of your chest, to give you hope, and then have it all come crashing back down. So, Trevor, we're not going to do it in the intro, but at the beginning of segment 1, we are going to get some details on your trip and that, but or you can get into it now, whatever, because you know what question I'm about to ask you. Vibe check. How are the vibes,
so
Mr. Hack Squad?
We'll start with the vibe first. I mean, I'm in the basement, to be honest. Like, this is we talked about this. Every week I say we talked about this before the pod. Literally all Will and I talk about for the most part is Vandy athletics and then funny tweets we see online. That's really that, or we watch the local news, the 10 p.m. news.
My first time in a while when there's not like a big weather event.
Yeah.
watching the local news. This episode might be a little long. We were expecting it to be short, but also this is a good episode to go on tangents.
Yeah.
Monday Night Football finished up. The local news came on with a strong story, whatever it was. It drew me in pretty quickly. So I was like, you know what?
Oh, it was about those kids shooting at an undercover cop.
Yeah, it was about kids shooting,
and then shooting at a
undercover
helicopter.
cop. Yeah, it was nuts. But then I was like, you know, I'm 27 now. Maybe it's time I start consuming some local news. There's a lot of stuff going on, dude. Fucking plane crashes
into the river.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Also, I didn't like the weatherman.
Yeah,
something about that weatherman. He seemed nervous. Don't know his name.
Alex Libby.
I don't want to crap on the guy. He was a younger guy. Not my favorite weatherman.
Yeah,
just one observation. 5 minutes. Don't want to publicly shame the man.
Yeah.
Maybe he's great at his job. I don't know. Didn't like him.
There was like human remains found in like a new residential neighborhood or something like that. You remember that one?
Yeah.
The firefighter with the crazy mustache.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was in Lebanon.
Oh yeah.
It was in Lebanon at a house that was being built.
Yeah, it wasn't even built yet. There was just like human remains.
Yeah, I watched the local news and I immediately understood why like my grandparents or older people in the mid-state area are terrified of Nashville.
Yeah.
I immediately understood. I was like, dude, I live here and go out with no problem.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, Loki, there's some crazy stuff going on.
There's some wild stuff. But Trevor, that's not really the overall vibe check.
No,
so how are we feeling?
No, the
You're
vibe,
in the basement.
Yeah, the vibe check is in the basement. So we discussed this. Last week the vibes were also in the basement, but this is a new way because this was, for me personally, probably the most gut-wrenching Vanderbilt loss I've experienced since the Jeff Scott Ole Miss. Like this one hurt. This like ETSU hurt, Temple obviously hurt, UNLV hurt, Georgia State hurt. This hurt, and like I legitimately had to take a look in the mirror. This is no lie. I took a look in the mirror and I did some self-reflecting. I'm like, dude, I am a grown man and I'm letting this stuff ruin like my weekend. I need to get a grip on reality. That game like did a number on me.
I know it was different than the situation I was in because you were there on the road, SEC game, top 10 team. Would have been the first time Vanderbilt beat a top 10 team since 2007 to South Carolina 7-6.
That's right. Sorry, Georgia was the year before.
Yeah,
in Sanford.
2007 they beat South Carolina, who was ranked in the top 10 at home 7-6.
Yeah,
I don't know how many years it had been since Vanderbilt has beaten a top 10 team on the road.
2006 Georgia at Sanford.
That was it. Okay,
kicked a field goal to win. So field goals,
but it's different. But what I was trying to explain why I was so negative after the Georgia State game, and I think Rolls might. I was furious after the Missouri game, or my heart was out of my chest, and I had the same kind of. I had to have a reality check. But being there on the road in person, you kind of get it now. It hurts more. It's the same why the Jeff Scott run hurt so bad because we were both there when that happened.
It was bad.
Like it was.
So shout out to big homie Joseph West. Whenever he missed that field goal, we did not say a word. We both just sat down and just stared off into the abyss. I kid you not. Faroe Field was 90% empty by the time like we looked at each other and we're like, you ready to go? We sat there in silence. Like it was tough. That was the biggest gut punch I've had in a long time.
There's a lot of nuance with this takeaway to get into. It's also brutal because it's tough to talk about it.
Yeah.
It just is. But TDR, we're here for the people, the sickos that are still listening to this and want to relive this. Shout out to you guys that are listening.
Sick freaks.
But before we get into breaking this down more and our 3 key takeaways, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. It's now time for segment 1.
Whoa, not cool, gang.
Welcome back into segment 1 of episode 283 of The Door Report. Starting out, we are recapping Vanderbilt's gut-wrenching 30-27 double overtime loss to number 7 Missouri. I want to start out actually segment 1. Before I forget, I'm going to plug this at the beginning of segment 1 and at the end of the episode here. Next week, there's of course a bye week, so we will not have a game to recap for Vanderbilt football. We are going to do, I don't know if we want to call it Talking with TDR Part 4 or what we want to call it exactly, but we are opening up the Twitter DMs, the email, the Instagram DMs. Send us voice messages about how you are feeling about Vanderbilt football at this point, because it's complicated.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to put it, is right now the emotions of fans are complicated because this team is objectively, without a doubt, better.
Yes.
And the best team and best product Clark Leys put on the field, and the best product as Vanderbilt fans, without a doubt, we have seen since 2018.
Yeah. It's been 6 years since we've seen a product this good.
So that's the tough part, is you're sitting at 2-2 and you could be / should be 4-0. 2 plays, basically. I know that field goal would have just sent it to the third overtime.
You would get on to a 2-point shootout.
But, and we'll get into the details of the game. We're not going to do a full play-by-play recap, but Vanderbilt had that game in the palm of their hands in that second overtime. They held Missouri to a field goal. They had that game. Yeah. They just didn't finish it. They didn't capitalize. Thus far, why the emotions are so mixed, the story of the Clark Lee era is not being able to consistently win close games.
So it's Jekyll and Hyde.
And it's the same comment. And during the Missouri preview, you can go back and listen to it. I said, and this was a lot closer of a game than I expected. But you can go back and listen to me and Trevor's preview of the Missouri game. And I said, we will be sitting here on this recap. Vanderbilt's going to lose a tight game. I didn't think it would be this close.
Yeah.
And we're going to be saying if they would have played 25 or 50% as well as they just played against Missouri, they would have beat the brakes off Georgia State. And that is exactly what we're saying right now. If they would have played with 40% of the efficiency, execution, and effort that you saw against Missouri, they would have beaten Georgia State by 20 plus.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't get to do it that way. It's who's the best team that day.
Yep.
Georgia State was better that day. That Vanderbilt team was a different team that you saw against Missouri.
Yeah, you don't play a series in football. You just play one-offs.
So I don't have a lot of notes written down because pretty much I can't go back and watch this game in the same way I can't go back and watch the Georgia State game. I try to be objective covering, but number one, me and Trevor are fans.
Yeah.
Number
First and
one,
foremost.
the only reason this podcast exists is we're sick and we're fans and we like talking Vanderbilt and watching. So I'm not doing a play-by-play recap.
No, it's somebody asked me, they texted me and they were like, are you going to go back and rewatch? And I said, there's no way in hell I'm going back and rewatching this. Like, it's just, that would be sadistic to go back and watch this ball game.
So I'm not doing a recap. I'm just going to state like 3 or 4 key plays that happen. And if you have any key plays that stick out in your mind, you can point them out. And then I'm going to run through the box score. Number one, first half, one of the most bizarre decisions I've ever seen in college athletics was Eli Drinkowitz, Brady Cook, that Missouri offense at the end of the second half, snapping the ball on 4th down from their own side of the 50. Snapping it with 11 seconds left, Vanderbilt getting a sack. Vanderbilt then actually turns that into a 57-yard field goal, a program record from Brock Taylor.
Shout out to Rocket Launcher.
Makes the score 13-10 at halftime. Vanderbilt goes into half with a lead. That was the main key play of the entire first half.
Yeah.
It was a huge mistake from Missouri, and for once, Clark Lee won the middle 8.
Yeah.
Clark Lee won the middle 8. And so I even tweeted at the end, towards the end of the half, before that situation happened, Clark Lee versus the middle 8. He never wins. And then I quote tweeted and said, never mind.
Yeah, he
won the middle 8.
Yeah.
And that's why this was a ball game at the end, was because he won the middle 8.
Yeah. So that's your first key play of the game?
I'm just going to run through a couple. It's not a key takeaway.
But you're just key plays
I'm just
that you
key
remember.
plays.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
There's Missouri's kicker struggled, some missed field goals. That
I've
helped
got a
Vanderbilt
story
a
with
lot.
that one, yeah.
And then at the end, so Vanderbilt gets a stop. I agreed with the decision at the time with Vanderbilt, where Vanderbilt was on the field after Missouri punted the ball at the end of regulation.
They should have kneeled that.
They should have kneeled
Yes.
it, but there was discussion from fans about you're the underdog on the road, take some shots. For once, I agreed with that conservative decision. I like Vanderbilt's chances of winning in overtime better than their chances with their offense of driving the ball 60 yards in a minute with, 2 timeouts?
Well, I think it was only one.
Only one. That's just not how Vanderbilt is built.
Yeah.
There's a much higher percentage chance of a turnover or giving the ball back to Missouri at that point. So
because Missouri still had timeouts left. People don't remember that. Missouri had, I think, one timeout
one
left.
or two.
Yeah.
1 or 2. They didn't have 3.
No.
So they couldn't extend the timeout.
Yeah.
That was a big deal that they had burned a timeout and caused that to happen. But Vanderbilt chose the conservative route. Vanderbilt comes out and scores in kind of a efficient, but it took them a few plays to score in that first overtime. Missouri scored in 1 play immediately.
Yep.
And then Vanderbilt's defense holds Missouri to a field goal. Vanderbilt gets the ball second in the second overtime, starts out with a big run from Pavia. They get a first down. And then in the second overtime, the play call and decision from Tim Beck that cost Vanderbilt this game, a fade route from the 12-yard line to Junior Sherrill that would have been intercepted had Junior Sherrill not committed offensive pass interference. 15-yard penalty. Vanderbilt then has the ball at the 27-yard line. They end up picking up a lot of yards and actually set up a very makeable field goal for Brock Taylor. Brock Taylor, who has performed so well outside of the 2 clutch situations he has been in this year. The one that sent Vanderbilt to overtime against Virginia Tech, he should have hit, and then he missed that in overtime to lose the game to Missouri. Brock Taylor, a young kicker, very talented kicker, the best leg Vanderbilt has ever had, talent-wise, but he's young. And I said to my dad in that second overtime, if they end up kicking a field goal, he's going to miss it. He's going to miss it, and he shanked it.
Yeah. And
I can see it, and it's still, I'm ill in picturing it in my brain. If you're listening to this, you've watched it. That was not a good recap, but I'm just sick thinking about it.
And on that missed field goal, to give a little bit of context, I'm not pushing off blame from Brock Taylor, though I sort of am a little bit, because Vanderbilt should have scored a touchdown and ended that ball game. Should Brock Taylor have made that field goal? Yeah, probably. But also, just to give a little bit of context, it had rained. I told you this, and I think you said they brought it up on the broadcast. It had rained all day in Missouri before the game. As soon as kickoff started, it stopped raining the entire game, not a sprinkle. I kid you not, maybe 30 seconds before Brock Taylor trots out there, it starts pouring. And whenever the rain started coming down heavy, I thought in my head, I go, oh my God, he's going to miss this. I was like, out of any time it could have started raining, at this very moment is when it starts to rain heavy. It just, if almost, I don't believe in football gods, obviously, but it felt like in that moment, I was like, they might be real.
They did bring it up on the broadcast. I'm glad you confirmed it did start raining, but either way, this is not a podcast that's going to come on here and shit on Brock Taylor.
No,
he is the reason that they were in that game in an overtime without a school program record field goal to end that first half. They're not in this game.
Yes.
That said, just objectively,
should have made it.
Being fair, it was a 31-yard field goal.
Chip shot.
That was a chip shot. You have to hit that field goal.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt should have had the opportunity in the third overtime. There was nothing. That play call was horrible from Tim Beck. But as a coaching staff, you just have to expect your kicker to hit a 31-yarder. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with those expectations. Yep, I agree.
So that's the recap. I'm losing my brain just looking at this game recap. It still hurts. I was actually feeling better today until this.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I love, and guys, we love doing TDR. Like, TDR is very, very special to us.
But
there are a few times to where it is really hard to do TDR. not because we just don't care, but like
care too much.
This this is legitimately, as corny as this sounds, this is painful to discuss at this current. And it's Tuesday. Like, you should be like, I understand. Like, I know that there's something wrong with me, that I'm not over this yet. Like, I know this is a me problem, but just being totally transparent, like, this sucks to like think about right now.
It does just suck. But let's run through the box score. We got to do it.
Oh, are we going to?
We got to run through the box score. Not the play-by-play, but the box score. We'll start with Missouri. Brady Cook, 23 of 37, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't force a turnover.
Yeah.
That was one of my keys. Vanderbilt also didn't lose any turnovers. So no turnovers on either side. So Vanderbilt didn't win or lose the turnover battle. Those passing numbers from Cook aren't incredible. Very good job in coverage from Vanderbilt secondary. Maybe that was fully the game plan, but Brady Cook had a lot of time in that pocket.
Ages.
So the coverage was great. Maybe they were just dropping that many guys. And I think I didn't see a ton of blitzes. But the front three from Vanderbilt could not get pressure on Cook. He had an eternity in that pocket the entire game. Nate Noel had a hell of a game. Almost ran for 200 yards, 24 carries, 199 yards. Marcus Carroll, 5 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, no Missouri receiver had over 100 yards. Luther Burden, 6 catches, 76 yards. Theo Weiss Jr., 5 catches, 55 yards, and a bunch of guys with 1 to 3 catches. Overall, about as good of a performance as I could have expected from the defense. Outside, the run defense left something to be desired, but the pass defense was so good. It was clearly Vanderbilt's game plan. We're just not going to allow big plays.
Yeah, overall, I thought the defense had a great game.
They allowed very few big plays.
Only 2 explosive plays, one of 64 yards, which was a run, and then another pass of, I believe, 30-something. So Vanderbilt limited a Missouri offense with really good wide receivers, a really good quarterback, and a quarterback that had a hell of a lot of time, only to 1 explosive passing play, 1 explosive run play. That's going to keep you in football games.
Yeah, and Luther Burden's longest catch of the game was 25 yards in overtime.
Yeah.
That was the only time Luther Burden got loose. So solid, a good enough job, very solid job by the defense. I mean, overall, just, I don't want to say incredible, because
I don't have any complaints about the defense. I thought Clark had a great game.
The pass rush.
The pass rush.
But overall, great game plan from Clark.
Yeah, the defense, and you want to talk about
after what you saw against Georgia State. Wow.
And you want to talk about in situations
and without CJ Taylor
in the first half, and you want to and without Zaylen Wood, who is one of your best pass rushers. You get Corday Sidner back, but was he 100% healthy? We don't know. But you want to talk about situational football, and I'm not trying to be like all up on Clark Lee right now, but man, whenever the defense needed to tighten up and get a stop against a good offense and a good head coach and offensive coach in Eli Drinkowitz, they did. Whenever they needed to stop, this defense bowed up and got a stop. Kudos to the defense. Other than the pass rush, I have no negative takeaways from the defense from a personnel standpoint or from a play calling standpoint.
And that's kind of the point of this, is if Vanderbilt had beaten Georgia State, this would be a very different recap and takeaway podcast. It just would. I would say it's not really fair. It is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a very different situation than going into the Missouri game playing with house money at 3-0.
Yeah.
You didn't need this one, but this would have set you back on track. So you needed this one a little more. We'll go to the Vanderbilt side here. Diego Pavia. Pavia was great. I mean, I had some issues with how he played against Georgia State. He was great.
Yep. Put the team on his back.
Yep. 14 of 23, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. Once again, 0 interceptions. Also was the team's leading rusher, 17 carries, 84 yards with a long of 38. Cedric Alexander, 11 carries, 52 yards. AJ Newberry, 6 carries, 18 yards, and a touchdown. And then I wouldn't normally read this one off, but I have to point something out. Junior Sherrill, 1 carry, -7 yards.
Fumble. Fumbled
that's
it. Yeah.
what I'm getting to. Whatever that exchange is on the jet sweep handoff, whatever that is with Sherrill, that is the second time in 4 games that Junior Sherrill specifically has fumbled that exchange. It happened against Virginia Tech.
That's the one.
They've landed on it both times. They haven't lost it, But both times they have tried to run that jet sweep action, he has fumbled it. And I think there was a third time he bobbled it and was able to maintain possession.
Was that third one the one that he bobbled? Because correct me if I'm wrong. There was a sweep to where he had a touchdown. Like, I think it was the Va Tech game to where if he'd held on to it, he had it. I don't remember. Maybe my mind's playing
take that one out of the playbook. It doesn't really matter. Take that out of the playbook.
Yeah.
And there's whatever reason, something's wrong in that exchange. Receiving, Joseph McVay with his first career receiving touchdown, 1 catch for 65 yards on a huge play. Beautiful pass from Pavia. Beautiful pass.
I tell you what, McVay's got some burners, dude. He torched those guys in the secondary. Shout out to him.
Eli Stowers, the only player on Vanderbilt's roster with more than 1 reception. 7 catches, 57 yards. Stowers is for real.
He's a dog.
And he has a connection with Pavia. I'm not barking today.
I got to salute the dogs always, unfortunately.
On defense, Brian Longwell played a very good game. 12 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. Randon Fontenette, 8 total tackles, 1 sack. Langston Patterson, 11 total tackles. The other sack was Corday Sidnor. 1 total tackle, 1 sack. DeCosmo with half a tackle for loss. Overall, the defense just played a solid game.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to keep reiterating. It was a good enough performance. It was a good enough performance to win that game from the defense.
Absolutely,
there's no doubt. So that's all I can really do. Brock Taylor was 2 for 4. Mirko, once again, had some incredible punts.
Yeah.
Mirko is everything you could have expected, just as good, if not better, than Hayball.
I was going to say, I think he's better than Hayball.
Which is crazy because Hayball's now punting in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so I think Mirko has an NFL career as well. As Vanderbilt punter you?
Vanderbilt might be punter you.
Might be punter you.
I was going to say the same thing. I think Mirko might be better than Hayball, and Hayball was a generational punter.
So Vanderbilt moves to 2-2, 0-1 in the SEC. I've already said it. I'll say it again. They could be / should be 4-0. They're not. Mm-hmm. So I've said it, and the reason I said it again is let's get to our 3 key takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to take a TDR cocktail break?
I can go either way.
Let's take the TDR cocktail break because this is going to be a quick episode, and we can get the remainder of our thoughts out after this. So if you're working, do not grab yourself an alcoholic beverage. Grab yourself another coffee, another energy drink, or an ice cold water, or room temp water, as I prefer. Or if you're listening to this after work, grab yourself an ice cold stiff alcoholic beverage. So take a second. And we will be back right after the TDR cocktail break. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break. I hope you have your cold beverage of choice sitting next to you. It's time for me and Trevor's 3 key takeaways from the 30-27 double overtime loss to Missouri. I'll start out here with mine because this is something I meant to get off my chest earlier in the episode. I put out a tweet after the Georgia State game. Should I pull up the tweet to make sure I actually say what I said correctly?
Pull up the tweet.
It is my words, but my brain is dumb, and I'm going to forget what exactly I said. So one second.
We want to make sure that we have the correct sourcing here on TDR. We're all about journalistic integrity.
That's what TDR is about, is journalistic integrity.
I mean, here, we've talked about this also. TDR has been represented at every single Vanderbilt football game thus far.
The only Vanderbilt media outlet that has done that.
Yeah.
The only one.
Not even the only Vanderbilt media outlet, the only media outlet, period, because the Tennessean sure hasn't. Do we lead the nation in Vanderbilt coverage? We might.
We might.
We might.
Step your game up, vandysports.com/Vandy247/Tennessean.
Yeah.
Step it up. So I put out a tweet that just simply said, time for Clarkley to go. He's a nice guy, but he's not an SEC head coach. I'm not ready to fully retract that statement. I do want to say I partially retract that statement, just because after the emotions of the Georgia State game settled down, this Vanderbilt team, and I said it earlier, is objectively the best team you have seen since 2018. You can see the progress that Clark Lea has made with talent year after year after year after year. You're in year 4. He was more talented in year 2 than he was in year 1. You can walk by, Alex. Our roommate's having to walk by on the edge here. You just saw the corner of him. Poke your head in.
Yeah, come on in, Alex.
This is our other roommate.
Come on
Alex
in.
is fixing his hair here. If you're watching,
There he
is. There he is. Wave hi to everybody. There he is. There we go. Alex was getting in some college football 25 out of screen here. All right, what was I even talking about?
You retracting your partially retracting.
Partially
your statement.
retracting. Clark Lea has improved the talent, even in year 3 that he went 2-10.
Mm-hmm.
The overall talent was better.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't execute better. It didn't come together better. But the 1 through 85 talent was better in year 3 than it was in year 2.
Yeah.
Year 4 is better than year 3 was.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the reason I want to partially retract that. Is I have always been a defender of Clark Lea just because the state of the roster he took over
Mm-hmm.
was truly the worst roster we have ever seen transition to a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
James Franklin did not leave a lot of talent for Derek Mason, but he left more talent than Derek Mason left for Clark Lea.
Yeah.
Bobby Johnson left a ton of talent
Left
for
a
James
treasure
Franklin.
trove.
People forget that almost every single key player during the James Franklin years was a Bobby Johnson recruit.
I don't think almost. I think every.
Well, outside of some quarterbacks.
Yeah, Jordan Rogers. Yeah.
But Jordan Matthews, that was a Bobby Johnson guy.
Chris Marv, Bobby Johnson.
So there, you can go down. We don't have to run through the list. But with the state of the roster, Clark Lea was coming off a team that literally could not finish the season.
Yeah.
Prior.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost just wipe away year 1
Mm-hmm.
in my. It's not fully. I almost think of that as team 0.
Yeah.
More than team 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough spot you're in with Clark Lea, because I also, on the other side, if I hear somebody vehemently defending Clark Lea, I've made this statement and made this comment to Trevor a lot. There's this weird notion in the Vanderbilt fan base, and it is unique to the Vanderbilt fans. And it's the same old Vandy that we always complain about that I don't want to lean in too much into, which is why I'm not fully retracting it. Vanderbilt fans, for some reason, believe that head coaches across the country exclusively get fired because they're getting blown out by opponents, that they're just getting destroyed week in, week out. That happens sometimes, but that's not usually the case. Most of the time, coaches are being fired because they can't win close games. They can't pull out the wins they need in key situations consistently. That's why coaches get on the hot seat. It's not because they're losing 41-3. So that's my other side of it, is maybe this is why most coaches get fired.
Yeah.
Is because you have so many close losses, and at some point it's not just bad luck.
Yeah.
At some point you're doing something wrong. Maybe it is bad luck, but that's the nature of sports. Maybe the ball just doesn't bounce the right way for you. And that's how it's felt through the Clark Lea administration. So I'm not all the way out on Clark Lea. I think this is the other side. I don't want to take away from any of my other keys, but I want to partially retract that statement. I really debated deleting that tweet, to be honest, but I'm not a tweet deleter. I like to leave my takes out there.
Yeah.
And if somebody brings them up, I add the context of the emotions that were behind them.
Yeah.
And I was pissed. I traveled to Atlanta and watched them lose to Georgia State. I was pissed.
You deserve to be pissed. Yeah.
I was angry. But that doesn't mean I'm on the Clark Lea train. It just means I understand why some Vanderbilt fans are saying chill out a little bit. I do understand it.
Yeah.
So that's my takeaway. This team could be 4-0, and we could be having a completely different conversation about Clark Lea being the savior of Vanderbilt football if 2 plays go differently.
Yeah.
If somehow Colby Taylor turns around and intercepts that ball in the corner of the end zone, Vanderbilt comes back and beats Georgia State against all odds, go to 3-0. Brock Taylor knocks through that field goal, or they don't throw that fade route and they end up running in a score. Vanderbilt's 4-0 and a top 10 team, and College game days coming to Nashville with Alabama coming to town. That's how close it is.
Yeah.
So
that's why it hurts.
That's why it hurts so bad, is it was right there. You had the chance to change the narrative. I used that phrase 50 billion times last episode, but it hits home again. You once again had the chance to change the narrative and you choked. Barstool Sports put out a tweet with the video of Brock Taylor missing that field goal from their main account. It said, I can't remember what the first line of it was. The second line was, Texas is number 1 and Vanderbilt is still Vanderbilt. Vandy's still going to Vandy. And that's what I mean. In the SEC circles, there's a lot of talk Vanderbilt's much better.
Yeah.
In the Vanderbilt fan base circle, there's, gut-wrenching losses, but overall Vanderbilt fans know the team is better. The issue that fans have is you had a chance to have the national media and average college football fans say, what's going on down at Vanderbilt? We need to pay attention. Diego Pavia, that guy's electric. This team's sitting at 3-1 or 4-0. Oh my God, this team's going to be fun to watch. And now that's off the table.
Yeah.
Now you're just playing. Maybe you can salvage a bowl game. Now you're playing for fans. So it's a little bit different, but you had the chance. It was right in front of you, and you blew it.
Yeah.
So that's my key takeaway number 1. Very convoluted, not really a takeaway, but just some overall thoughts about the narrative of the season and me retracting that statement fully.
Yeah.
Partially.
Before I get into my key takeaway number 1, I also want to sort of piggyback off what you said. There's also been this sort of narrative around, and maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but I feel like there's sort of been this narrative around TDR, definitely as long as I can remember, that TDR is like kind of harsh, and people are like, oh, come on, support the boys, yada, support Vanderbilt. And we talked about this, like I said, we literally talk about everything before the pod. You will not find, and this is no disrespect to any other Vandy fan, because I know there are lifelong Vandy fans that have watched much more athletics from this school than we have. You would be, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm going to do it. You would be hard-pressed to find 2 people that care more about Vanderbilt athletics than Will and I. Like, I'm just going to, I don't want to be that guy, because TDR is for the fans, by the fans. This is all for you guys. I will stand on that and say you will be hard-pressed to find 2 people that care more about Vanderbilt athletics than we do. So don't come at TDR and be like, support the boys. We've been supporting these guys for as long as we've lived, and we'll do it forever.
Every one of, this is going to be a longer. This isn't.
Bothers
We're going to
me.
get off the key takeaway now, and we just have to talk about this. We don't make any money off this. I lose money off of this.
Yeah.
Trevor pays for this equipment and the producer and StreamYard all on his own. Vanderbilt's media coverage. We love the people that cover Vanderbilt for the most part. Not shitting on them. TDR is the only media outlet. If you're not watching on YouTube, I'm putting quotations because we are not an official media outlet.
No, we're just dudes.
We're the only coverage of Vanderbilt that has been at all 4 games.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad. Be better,
Yeah.
guys. Be better. Go to the games.
Yeah.
Be better. If you are a representative specifically from the Tennessean,
Mm-hmm.
be better.
Yeah.
Do your job better.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve to be supported. You want to talk about us being critical? Go to as many games as we go to.
Yeah.
And if you do, then I respect it.
Yeah.
There are people that disagree with us that I know go to all the games. I respect it.
Yeah.
If you disagree with it, I respect it. You're there at every game. People that are sitting there watching them on TV, you don't get to say we're being too critical.
Mm-hmm. No, you don't get to quite. And that, I don't know. After I just went on a tangent that I'm like, I need to look in the mirror and get a grip on reality. I'll just say that does, this is special to us. Like, we deeply care about Vandy athletics. And yeah, we get emotional. We don't work for Vandy 247. We don't work for VandySports.com. We don't work for the Tennessean. We're not supposed to be some unbiased publication. No, we are fans producing content for diehard fans. We are going to get upset. We are going to get angry. We are going to get excited. That's just the nature of the beast.
And the thing is, TDR has always strived and always will strive. We will never be a clickbait type of thing. There's no clickbait associated. Our episodes are not curated to the YouTube algorithm. We don't put out clips. We don't put out tweets that are just clickbait. Never will happen ever. But we are in a unique spot. Me and Trevor are both 27. Stop me if I've said this on an episode before, because I forget what I've talked to you and my dad about and what I've actually said on the show.
I do the same thing. I'm like, have I talked to Will
Yeah.
or my dad about this or the pod? I don't know.
So I already made my statement in my key takeaway 1, which we are still on my key takeaway number 1. Like, actually,
Let's just
technically.
let it hang.
But my key on that is we're in a unique spot. If you are 100% watching this team and feeling fully positive, like, wow, they're moving in the right direction. This is good. Vanderbilt's getting better. This is good to see. And that's fully your view. You have either, number 1, not been a Vanderbilt fan long enough, or number 2, you have been a Vanderbilt fan for too long.
Yeah.
It's one of those two. There's a sweet spot that everybody that has lived through, that's around our age of Vanderbilt fans, that has seen a little glimpse of success throughout their life. So I'm not saying it's time to just take a giant crap on the entire program and say it's time to completely start from square one. Let's just completely clean house.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but at the same time, sitting at 2-2 with a loss to Georgia State is also a little unacceptable.
Not a little, it's straight up unacceptable.
The only thing that prevents you from saying that is they did beat Virginia Tech when they were a big underdog. So that's the only reason this season is not a full disaster. So I want to reiterate that, because I think that's a very good, I have very rare moments that I have a good consolidated statement. But if you're feeling real positive, you've either not been a Vandy fan long enough, or you've been one for too long, because next year, I don't have the full list of players, but they lose Pavia, they lose Stowers, they lose CJ Taylor, they lose Quincy Skinner Jr., they lose offensive linemen, they lose a lot of talent. This was the year that Vanderbilt had the opportunity. And Vanderbilt doesn't get to just say, oh, this season's, let's scrap it.
We'll
just reload next offseason. This isn't Florida State.
This is not, this is Alabama.
This isn't Florida State. This isn't even Auburn. You can't just effortlessly reload the same way. So that's the not being a Vanderbilt fan long enough, is it's different. When you see that uptick in Vanderbilt football, you have to capitalize on it, because you have to not just improve, you have to change people's mindsets and views around your program to continue the momentum. So that's why Vanderbilt is the toughest job in the country. It is the toughest job of any sport at any level in all of sports.
I totally agree.
Vanderbilt football is the toughest job in all of sports at any level. And that is why I'm a little bit lenient on Clark Lee right now. That's my very convoluted key takeaway 1.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's finally time for me to get to my key takeaway number 1. The penalties have to stop. The penalties have to stop. We'll go back to being a little bit negative. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, Vanderbilt has now lost 2 football games because of penalties. I get it. The play wasn't where you wanted it to be for Georgia State. I thought the play was there for where you wanted it to be against Mizzou, but I think you lost both of those games because of penalties, and it's stupid penalties. It is procedural penalties. It is unnecessary roughness penalties. I get it, like against Georgia State, like the line is Zunk, CJ, kind of BS. But Chase Mitchell had I don't know. I don't know if it was good or bad, because I was at the game and we couldn't really tell, and I haven't gone back and watched it. But you have another unnecessary roughness or unsportsmanlike penalty. But the procedural stuff, guys, the procedural stuff is losing Vanderbilt ball games. The false starts, the illegal motions, the too many men on the field, that is losing Vandy ball games. Vanderbilt, and when I totally agree with what you said, this is the most talented team that Clark Lee has had. This is the most talented team, I think, and I agree with you, we've seen since 2018. This is the most talented football team we've seen in 6 years of Vanderbilt football. But they are still not good enough to have these stupid penalties and win close ball games. I don't even think they were good enough during the James Franklin era to commit stupid penalties and still win meaningful ball games. I said it a couple pods ago that the penalties don't really worry me, because I think that's something you could clean up. We're 4 games into the season and we haven't cleaned it up. I'm really afraid this is just who Vanderbilt is, and this is going to continue. And as you progress through the season, once again, gold-colored glasses, I'll be a sunshine pumper for a teeny bit. I think Vanderbilt still has a path to a bowl game. I think you should definitely beat Ball State. I think Kentucky, Auburn, and South Carolina, those are going to be dog fights. And Vanderbilt is going to have to play good football to win those games. But if Vanderbilt plays good football in terms of plays, but commits these dumb procedural penalties, we are going to lose all 3 of those SEC ball games, and it's going to cost Vanderbilt their season. That's my key takeaway number 1. You have to clean that stuff up.
Well, since that's your key takeaway number 1, that is my key takeaway number 2 is titled penalties.
It's bad.
So we are synced up on that one. I'll just read off stats since you exactly said what I would have said. Vanderbilt had 8 penalties for 93 yards. Missouri had 3 penalties for 33 yards. It's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, one of those was a 15-yard penalty on an offensive PI that was actually a great play by Junior Sherrill.
Yeah, he had to do that.
He had to do that. That saved the game and at least gave Vanderbilt an opportunity to kick a field goal. Mm-hmm. The Chase Mitchell penalty, they showed the replay. You could barely see it. Even the announcers were like, I don't know about that one. Somebody clearly said something to Chase Mitchell after the play, and all Chase Mitchell did was kind of bump face masks with him. He did get in his face. Technically was a penalty. You can't do it. It was dumb, but boy, was it ticky-tack.
Yeah.
It wasn't Chase Mitchell, at least from what I saw. And if somebody has another video, send it to me. From what I saw, it was not Chase Mitchell running out of nowhere and clocking somebody or shoving somebody or anything like that. He just kind of got in somebody's face for a second. Very light penalty that probably shouldn't be called in an SEC football game. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So like I said, Vanderbilt had 8 penalties for 93 yards. I'm looking up their overall penalties on the season to see where they rank. Vanderbilt, penalty yards per game, 81 penalty yards per game, ranking 121st in the country.
That's worse than I thought it would be.
Vanderbilt, 10.6 penalties per game, ranking 125th in the country. They are committing not just penalties in the yardage, they're just committing a lot of penalties, a lot of small procedural stuff you just can't have. When you're not the more talented team week in, week out. You can't commit turnovers, which Vanderbilt overall has done a really good job of this year, not committing turnovers.
Yeah, they've done a great job.
They have not done a good job of the second part of that, which is penalties. So that's my key takeaway number 2, and your number 1 is penalties. If I hadn't made that tweet about Clark Lee, that probably would have been my key takeaway number 1. As far as the actual game is concerned, that's my number 1 key takeaway. So, Trevor, what's your number 2?
My number 2 I feel like I'm hitting on big stuff right here. Like, it's not really something nuanced or specific. Diego Pavia is a dog, and soak up every minute of Diego Pavia as a Vanderbilt Commodore that you can. If you can afford to go to Vanderbilt home football games, or even away, go simply to watch how magnificent and electric at the game of football Diego Pavia is. Diego Pavia is the most electric Vanderbilt football player since Keyshawn Vaughn. And I would even make the argument he's more electric than Keyshawn Vaughn just because he plays that quarterback position. It's the most important position in all of sports. Diego Pavia, even though he's going to play one season at Vanderbilt, could go down as one of the most memorable Commodores of all time. I have nothing negative to say thus far about Diego Pavia's gameplay, about how he plays the game, about his attitude. He has kept Vanderbilt in games that they traditionally would not have been in because of the way he's put on for this team. I absolutely love Diego Pavia.
Yeah, I like you brought up Pavia because I also had a tweet that said Diego Pavia played really, really bad against Georgia State. Really, really bad was a bit of an overstatement. He did miss some guys in that game. But overall, he's not perfect. But the reason that I said Pavia played really, really bad against Georgia State is I think he's that good. It's the same way that I always talk about, and I've mentioned it 100 times, is the subtle disrespect of low expectations. I don't have low expectations for Diego Pavia. I think he's a dog, and I expect him to play as a top tier, not barking today, as a top tier quarterback week in, week out. And basically he's done that.
Yep.
And Pavia has been as advertised. He is as advertised. He has had the quarterback play of a guy that should be 4-0.
Yeah.
He's not been perfect. No quarterback is, but he's been incredible.
He's been pretty darn close to perfect.
So I'm also glad you brought up Pavia, because I really think this leans into my third key takeaway, which Phoebe jumps up.
Hello, little one.
Welcome. So I'm going to throw in a quick third takeaway and then my actual one. So my quick one is pass rush has to be better. That's not anything specific. We already talked about that. But my real third key takeaway is an overall season takeaway. A bowl game is not off the table at all, but the path is very difficult. And I personally still think this team can do it. After what I saw against Missouri, it's tough. You're going to lose to Alabama probably, and you're going to be 2-3. And you have 4 reasonably very winnable games on your schedule, 5 relatively winnable if you count LSU. But 4 very winnable games. You have no room for error anymore, but I think this team can do it. I'm not a sunshine pumper. I don't even think they are going to do it, but I think they can. And so I'm not ready to throw in the towel on this season. I think Vanderbilt can do it. If they make a run, if Vanderbilt makes a run and makes a bowl game, throw every negative comment I've made about Clark Lea out the freaking window. If he manages to keep this team tied in, locked in week to week after the gut-wrenching losses they have experienced through the first 4 weeks, and he manages to rally them and they end up executing and making it to a bowl game, that will be an incredible, incredible coaching job from Clark Lea. I personally don't think he's going to do it. I don't think the team is going to do it, but they can do it. So please, Clark, please, team, prove me wrong. Right now, if I had to predict, I'd predict 5-7, which is above what I predicted before the season. It's below what my expectations are for a coach in year 4. But if this team even goes 5-7, it's a big make or break year for Clark Lea in year 5, and they should bring him back if they go 5-7. But there is a path to 6 wins. And until this team has 7 losses in that loss column, I think this team can win 6 games. There's nobody that I don't think Vanderbilt has at least a 5% chance to beat on this schedule. Granted, I think Texas might be the lowest of that, but I think with this team, with Diego Pavia at quarterback, they have a puncher's chance against anybody. I don't think they'll even come close to Bama or Texas or Tennessee, but they have a puncher's chance because they have a quarterback. If you have a quarterback, you have a chance, and this team has a chance to make a bowl game. So let's stay focused. Don't shift your sights to next season or anything, Vanderbilt fans. Let's stay focused on this year. This is a talented football team that has greatly missed opportunities this season. So my key takeaway number 3 is it's not time to throw in the towel yet. Yet.
Before I go to my third takeaway, you said 5-7. Out of those winnable SEC games, what are the 2 you have us dropping?
The 2 I have us dropping?
Sorry, the 1. I'm sorry.
It would be 1. Yeah.
Sorry, I was including LSU. Sorry, I meant just the 1.
So it's an either. But I really do think I have no logic behind this. Auburn. They're the worst one. And I have no logic behind it. But going to Jordan O'Hare, facing Auburn, everything before the season would tell you Vanderbilt is built to beat Auburn. Auburn has looked worse than you could have imagined they would have looked. And in very Vanderbilt fashion, I think they will beat South Carolina and Kentucky. Right now, this is pure vibe. This probably won't be my prediction the week before. But I think Vanderbilt beats Kentucky, beats South Carolina for the first time since 2008, and then loses to Auburn. In the most, just based off Vanderbilt, for the same reason I predicted Vanderbilt would lose to Missouri in a tight game. There was no logic behind that. It was the most Vanderbilt thing possible on the planet to beat Virginia Tech and lose to Georgia State. That's why. But they should beat the crap out of Ball State, and they should win I swear to God, if they just end up hitting my 4-8 prediction, I'm going to be a little mad.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little mad.
I would be pissed
if my
too.
prediction ends up being right in the most wrong way I ever could have seen. But yeah, that's maybe the one just for no logic in my brain at all.
Yeah. My third takeaway. Once again, this is not just a Mizzou takeaway necessarily, but also a little bit of a season takeaway, and not just a season takeaway, the past couple of season takeaways. I will start out by saying I think Clark Lea as defensive coordinator, for the most part, I think Clark Lea has done a really, really, really good job. Obviously, that Georgia State game, that final drive was an absolute disaster and was horrible. No excuse for that. Really no excuse for that entire game. But I think for the most part, I think Clark Lea has done a really, really, really good job as defensive coordinator. Now, I am of the opinion, I do not think a head coach also being a coordinator is necessarily sustainable long term. So eventually Clark Lea is going to need to hire a real defensive coordinator. My third takeaway is Clark Lea should hire Nick Lazinski as the defensive coordinator before another Power 4 program comes and swoops him up this season. I think Nick Lazinski has showed you everything you wanted to see. I think the way the linebackers have played year after year, especially linebackers that he didn't really have a lot of talent. Like last year, like he was playing with Ethan Barr as his main linebacker. I think what Nick Lazinski has done with this linebacker group, especially this year, Langston Patterson, he obviously got a great kid in that and a great football player. Brian Longwell, not a highly recruited kid. Nobody really thought much of him. He comes into this Vanderbilt program. Nick Lazinski has him playing at a very, very high level. And then I know I hated on Nick Rinaldi a lot last season. What Nick Lazinski and how he has utilized Nick Rinaldi this year, really in the pass coverage game. He's only like, hey, I'm only going to throw you out there when we know we need you to fall back into pass coverage. Nick Rinaldi has been really, really good in that aspect. I think Nick Lazinski is a really, really, really good football coach. And I don't think Clark Lea's DC is sustainable, even though I wish it could be. My third takeaway is that Clark Lea needs to hire Nick Lazinski as his defensive coordinator before another Power 4 program swoops him up. Because I'm telling you, if he does not, Nick Lazinski will leave this offseason because another Power 4 program will come by and ask him to be their DC. Mark my words, timestamp this, blood bank guarantee that would happen.
I think regardless, he might be gone. Just logically, not thinking from a care perspective. If I was Nick Lazinski as an up-and-coming coach seeking a defensive coordinator position, I'm not going to hitch my cart to a dying horse.
That's fair.
And you'd be going into his first gig as defensive coordinator potentially in Clark Lea's last season as head coach if things don't work out.
That's fair.
Very high-risk, high-reward situation. That's our three key takeaways. I mean, just gut-wrench. I've said that 20 times, but I want to continue to talk about it, but really I don't want to keep talking about it. I'm sick to my stomach. I want to reiterate here, we will have Talking with TDR. We want to hear from everybody listening to this right now. DM the Door Report on Twitter, message us on Instagram, send us emails to doorreport@gmail.com. We don't know how many we're going to get. This next episode could be 2 to 3 hours. We're not going to go over 3 hours. We're just not. So in the order, depending on how many, because I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of thoughts people want to get off their chest with a bye week. We're going to go in order of received. We're going to go Twitter first. What we get sent to us to the Door Report's Gmail account second, and Instagram is going to be third. So if you are sending us stuff on Instagram, we'll see. It depends on how much we get on Twitter.
Shoot
and
for
Gmail.
Twitter, guys.
Shoot for Twitter. Twitter is the primary. Send us voice messages on Twitter. If you don't want to send a voice message, send us just a normal written DM or send us an email to our Gmail. We want to hear from everybody because there's a lot of thoughts out there and a very, very wide range of feelings about Clark Lea from this fan base right now. And it's really hard to get a read on how everybody feels. There's some people that are 100% on the Clark Lea train. There are some people that are calling every single day for him to be fired immediately. And then there are kind of me and Trevor that are saying he's going to be back for year 5. He deserves to be back for year 5. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you are Vanderbilt, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
He is a graduate. He cares. The staff cares. The staff changes seem to have improved the team. They seem to be utilizing the transfer portal better than they have. They've adapted to that. Clarkley needs another offseason, another opportunity to build up this roster. And then year 5, he will be on the hot seat. Unless this team makes a bowl game. Before this season, I was I went on a couple other podcasts and was shooting down the idea Clarkley was on the hot seat. That I said no matter what happens, he will be back year 5. If they don't make a bowl game this year, he will objectively, without a doubt, be on the hot seat in year 5. And if this team doesn't perform in year 5, then he has to be gone. That's half a decade.
Yeah.
You got to do something in half a decade.
Yep.
You just do. Anything else you want to add on episode 283, Trevor?
The city of Columbia, Missouri sucks. The city of Jefferson City, Missouri sucks. The entire state of Missouri sucks. Nothing redeemable about it. Faroe Field is actually really nice. Mizzou fans, for the most part, are really, really nice people, actually, except for like a couple that me and Big Joe West almost got into an altercation with. Food sucks. Roads suck. Terrible weather. I will say this, and this will be my closing thought. Faroe Field was a very cool stadium. The fans, super quiet. Very, very, very like quiet stadium atmosphere. It was weird. Like I thought it was sold out. Like I thought it was gonna be this like raucous SEC environment, 2 SEC teams. You have a top 10 Mizzou team at the time. They were very quiet. It was a very strange environment for the most part.
Interesting. Trevor was in person. TDR, your main source of news, covering boots on the ground.
Dude,
TDR is there.
4 games, 2 altercations, baby.
Let's go, baby. That was clean. That was a clean dap up. That's a great way to end.
Shout out to Big Joe West. If I got in a bar fight with Jocko Willings, Genghis Khan, and I don't know, Alexander the Great, and I can only have 2 people in my corner, it'd be Will Byrum, Big Joe West.
Hell yeah, brother. It's a good place to end episode 283. For myself, Will Byrum, our producer, Phoebe, and my co-host, Trevor Hulan, this has been episode 283 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collectibles.